My name is Stephen Joachim. I am originally from the United States. I was born and lived most of my life in Texas, a little bit of time in Chicago and Washington, D.C., and Atlanta. And now I live in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and that's where I actually uh, met uh, Jared and became aware of this program.
Stephen,
So,
it's great to see you again.
likewise, it's been a long
Before
time.
we uh, before we dive into your story, I might just give a quick overview of Pride in the Living Room. So, quick reminder: Pride in the Living Room was founded by Israeli Jewish LGBT task force Agudah in memory of the 2009 Tel Aviv Gay Center shooting and the Jerusalem Pride Parade stabbing in 2015. And this project was founded to offer a voice and a stage to LGBT Jews from around the world. And as Stephen said, we're taking a trip to Buenos Aires today, this evening, and over to you.
Okay, well, thank you. Um, I was raised conservatively somewhat. We weren't observant, but we went to a conservative shul. But I mean, every Friday night, you bet the candles were lit and Kaddish was said, as well as a motzi. And as I realized I was gay, I figured there would never be an opportunity for me to be Jewish because gay and Jewish just didn't mix. I was born in 1953. I was a bar mitzvah in 1966. So those were times past when there were no GLBT synagogues or Jewish organizations of any kind. And in 1975, when I met my partner, he was not Jewish. He was pretty much a-religious. And anytime I went to something, and I was in Austin, Texas, I graduated from the University of Texas. Anytime I went to a family or friend's place, they were always trying to set me up with some girl. And that was just the normal Jewish thing to do. And that was really uncomfortable. So I kind of dropped out of Jewish life because I wasn't interested and I had a partner already who I wasn't prepared to introduce to anyone at that time. So that was 1975. Our relationship lasted for 42 years. I'm still married to him. He lives here in Argentina. We just don't happen to live together anymore. But how did I get back to being Jewish after 20, 30 years of thinking this is impossible? 20 years thinking this is impossible. There's just can't be any such thing as a gay Jew. And I moved with a job to Chicago, Illinois in 1992. And lo and behold, there is a gay Jewish synagogue there at that time, Congregation Ochadash. So I was like, here I am, my partner's back at home in Texas. I'm here, and maybe I have come to the promised land because there is a gay synagogue here, and I can go to shul, and I can go to Shabbat services, and I can go to high holiday services, and I can bring back something that I left behind a long, long, long time ago. And I was so excited. And in the 3 years, 3 months, and 16 days that I lived in Chicago, I became active in the synagogue. I was the treasurer. Then I became the president of the synagogue in that short amount of time. And the Reform Jewish movement in the United States also was welcoming to gays, and I was on various committees in the national spotlight of the Reform Jewish movement, the Hebrew Union of American Hebrew Congregations, now called the URJ, Union of Jewish Congregations, or something like that. Anyway, it was a great opportunity. And while I was up there, again, in the early 90s, mainstream congregations, of which there are about 50 Reform congregations in the Chicago area, would invite me as the president to come and speak to their board or to select groups within their synagogues to talk about being gay and Jewish. And kind of as an attention getter, I would start my presentation with Yit Gadal V'Yit Gadash Shemei Rabbah, which is how the Jewish prayer for the dead starts, which is what my father said for me when he found out that I was gay and I didn't want to change. So in addition to finding Judaism and gayness, I also lost my family. So I was dead to my family. I was disowned and disinherited. And I was exploring life as a new and separate person with my non-religious partner. And one year there was the World Congress of LGBT Jews conference in London. And I told my partner, Steve, I go by Stephen, he goes by Steve, that I was going to the World Congress biennial in London. And he says, oh, well, I'll go too. So I guess he didn't want me going to London by myself, or he just wanted to join. And he went to a workshop. Okay, it was a Sabbath. It wasn't a workshop. It was a study group because we don't work on the Sabbath. He went to a study group for non-Jewish spouses. And the overriding theme that he got from that was, well, the overriding question that they all had was, what is this thing that is Jewish or Jewishness that has such a grasp on our partners that we just don't understand? And that was the genesis of his researching Judaism, and ultimately, without my prompting, converting to being Jewish. So we had Jewish life for a while. We remodeled our kitchen in Georgia. We had a kosher style kitchen. While we didn't always buy kosher products, we had 2 sets of dishes. We had 2 dishwashers. We had 2 sets of pots and pans. And we were as kosher style as you could be without buying actual kosher meat, which is very, very expensive. But here in Argentina, it's not that expensive. Argentina is the world's largest producer of kosher meat. Anyway, so my partner and I had a Jewish ceremony. We made a trip to Israel soon after he converted because I wanted to have him kind of immerse in Jewish identity after he converted. And then a couple of years later, we had Kiddushin, which was not legal, but it was a Jewish wedding ceremony. And then we started the process to adopt. And our son that we have now is 24 years old. We adopted him when he was 18 days old. So pretty much we're responsible for all the good and any of the bad. And he lives in Atlanta. He's a carpenter and not working right now with COVID. But so after 20 years of being together, we dramatically changed our lives by adopting a 3-week-old baby. And that did change our lives, and it still impacts our lives today. We're both retired, but we still have a dependent child who we raised Jewish and sent to Jewish day school. He was the only Black kid in Jewish day school for most of the time, which was also an interesting situation. But nobody ever asked him, why do you have 2 dads? So this is actually, we went to see him the weekend that the Ellen DeGeneres show had the coming out episode. So that was the mark of the start of our relationship as a family with an infant. And he was in Jewish day school. They never asked, why do you have 2 dads? Which would seem to be the logical question, but it was just, why are your parents white? So it was like, from the time that, I thought in the 70s that I could never be gay and Jewish, the gay thing wasn't even a conversation among kids anymore. I mean, that just was like, so what? Which was a big deal because in 1982, I took my partner to an AT&T company picnic and got fired from my job after that. And I sued them in federal court and lost because up until about 6 weeks ago, the United States did not have nationwide protection for LGBT Jews and employment. And that's a big shock to some people. Even when I told my brother about the Supreme Court decision that had been made about 6 weeks ago, he says, what do you mean you didn't have protections? I said, that's what everybody thinks, that there's protections, and there's not protections. Well, there wasn't protections. And I actually found the attorney that represented me in front of AT&T and called him that morning and found him, and he answered the phone himself. And I just said, do you remember me, and do you remember the case? He said, oh, yes. He said, I will never forget that. It was like 30-something years since. But it was just, even though I lost my job, even though I had bad financial difficulties as a result, I was so happy. I was just ecstatic, like I was in 2015 when gay marriage became legal in the United States. Steve and I had gone to Canada. We had become married before it was legal in the United States because we wanted to do everything possible to protect our son as a family. And so when you're married and you have a child, that goes a lot further. And that was one of our goals for protecting Neil. So I found a congregation. I found a partner open to converting. We had a successful adoption in Texas. And we lived together for a long time and did a lot of things and went a lot of places and raised what we hope will turn out to be a independent young man who's still dependent on us in this economic time. But I mean, we've taught him what we know, and we've done the best we could. I'm still friends with him after all these years, but we just kind of, after 42 years, had a couple of different ideas about things and went different directions. But we both still live here in Argentina. We moved here together. We live in Buenos Aires. Um, Still trying to learn Spanish, which is an embarrassment for as long as I've been here that I don't speak Spanish, but it just isn't one of my skill sets. And I had been going to the synagogue here on Friday nights, even though the services are in Spanish. A lot of it's in Hebrew, and I already kind of knew that part. So I don't really understand the sermons, but actually there's a woman that takes notes. And if you want, after they do the, at the end of the service, they do a kiddush, and then she will explain what the rabbi said if you go up to her, and she will, from her notes, give a little bit of an English summary. So there are lots of Jews here in Argentina. It's an important community here. Though I haven't really integrated into it, there was an amazing Pride event for the 50th Stonewall. And I now decided to re-engage in the organization, the World Congress of LGBT Jews, that really put me and my partner on the path to having a Jewish family. So I'm the treasurer of that organization. I also am the communications coordinator and do the newsletter for that organization. And I'm involved as a retired person. I do that. I volunteer for the embassy. I also am the primary contact for the Ex-Students Association for Argentina for my school where I graduated. And in spite of the difficulty getting fired, filing for bankruptcy, having this and that happen through my life, being disowned, I have a good life. And you just can't give up. You have to stick with it. You have to find a support group sometimes that's very helpful. The friends that I made in Chicago in the years that I lived there from 1992 to 1995 are still my friends. Even though I don't live there, I haven't been there much on and off. But making that Jewish connection again and being a part of that synagogue changed my life forever and changed the life of my partner and made a Jewish family that still can identify with today. And I don't know, maybe that's it. Questions?
I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much, Stephen, for sharing your beautiful story. Um, I think what I take away from it is really the struggles that you've had in your life, and this quest to to live your authentic life, to merge every piece of yourself together and to live just one life rather than different lives in different places. And I think it's truly inspiring to see that after everything you've spoken about, you've come out the other side with positivity and with love. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Well, you're very welcome. And I'm glad that I can tell the story from this perspective, because there are times when I never imagined that I would be who and what I am today. And I'm thinking, and just on the side note, nothing to do with being gay or Jewish, perhaps, I've held elective public office as well when I lived in Texas. And I lived in a small community with my partner. And it was just the two guys living together. So they probably knew I was gay, and still got elected to the council. And the great thing is, of course, now no one can fire me. So I can live my more authentic self and have, for even in my last couple of jobs, I've been out and without any hesitation, because you've got to be yourself, and you're welcome.
I have a few follow-up questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
Uh, well, just to follow on from what you've said, you have run for public elected office in the States or in
Texas.
Buenos Aires?
It was in Texas.
In Texas. And you've been president at Congregation Or Hadash. And there's a common thread in your stories that you seek positions within organizations where you can have a voice, where you can maybe affect policy. Why do you think you're drawn to those types of roles?
Well, you know, I didn't have the internet. I didn't have any resources. And now, of course, there are many resources. Not all of them are positive or good, but any opportunity that I have, whether it was in the reform uh, movement in the US or the World Congress, um, or well, even the accomplishments that I had when I was in public office. Uh, I feel driven to do that. I'm not sure I know why, but I feel driven to be involved, to make a difference if I can. I don't do it for the publicity. I do it for the result that I want. So if I want change, I want things to be better. And in my own way, I pursue that.
And you also sued AT&T, which other people in the same situation probably would have taken the hit and had to move on. But you took a stand and you fought for what was important.
I did. And of course, not having a job, and I called all my relatives and I asked them for money for the retainer that I needed for the attorney, because I felt very strongly about it. And they were willing to help me. And so today there would be no Joachim versus AT&T, but because companies have groups that support and recognize and honor their GLBT employees. The next fight, of course, is for people who are not cisgendered and trans or whatever variety of other identities. So there's always a battle, and I'm not fighting them anymore, but I hope that I've inspired somebody to fight their battle.
Well, I think that anyone hearing your story will take away will take that away. Um, so I'm interested to ask this. You were talking about a darker moment in your life when you were, um, I guess, disowned by your family when you came out to them, or when you introduced Steve to them. Or maybe were those in the same event?
Well, they had already met Steve, but they didn't know I was gay. But it's a my sister. One of my sisters found out I was gay. She freaked out, um, which freaked out my parents, which then they tried to come and freak me out, I guess, because my dad said, I had 30 days to change, to get help, to go to clinics or whatever, or suffer the consequences as he saw it. But I was baked. I mean, I was cast into who I was, and I was and am gay, and that's not going to change for any reason, uh, even a reason to make my dad, happy or anything else. And I've reconnected with all the family
Do you think,
since he passed away. Since he passed away,
right?
not before.
Do you think that the uh, do you think that it influenced the reaction was influenced by the fact that you were dating a non-Jewish person, or do you think that was not really a factor?
I don't think that was a factor. My sister, well, he converted, so. But originally, my sister was dating someone who was not Jewish, and that by the time they were married, he was Jewish. So I don't really think that was a factor.
Let's move on to something else. I think
Okay.
it's really um, I've done many of these interviews already, and um, giving people the space to talk through their coming out stories um, is often cathartic, or it's an identifying moment for people, because coming out is a very personal thing. But ironically, a lot of people in the world experience this very personal thing, and it's a great moment of connection, I've noticed. So thank you very much for going into that space.
Oh, well,
Um,
you're very welcome.
so you spoke about going to a British LGBT group. What was it called again? In London?
Oh, it was the World Congress of GLBT Jews is a worldwide organization, and every couple of years, various groups hold an international meeting. So I've been to the one in Paris. I went to one in Paris. There are a number of them in the United States, and then in London. But it's WCLGBT.org, World Congress, GLBT.org is the organization.
And what sort of work um, are they doing these days? They've been around for a while. Are they still alive and kicking?
Well, I do put out the newsletter every other month. Um, we do have members for here, and the vice president's also here in Argentina, the president's in the United States. We have the board also includes somebody in Colombia, Italy, the Netherlands, and we are an organization of organizations primarily. We do have individual members. I'm an individual member, actually, but we speak with a voice for the gay Jewish community. Like recently, when a when a seminary would not give shmicha or recognition to an LGBT person who had graduated, they wouldn't give him the title rabbi. So we got involved and found an Orthodox group that would give him shmicha or ordain him as a rabbi, even though he's gay. So we write letters to various organizations, even the Knesset, the government of Israel or whatever, about the disparity in the government benefits in Israel for adoption or surrogacy. I don't think gays get paid for surrogacy by the healthcare plan where straight couples do. So we identify things that impact both LGBTQI and Jewish people, and try to promote policies that further their equality.
You were talking about going to, I think you were in London, and Steve had a big sort of an epiphany in terms of Judaism. And you were saying they were asking, what is it about Judaism that keeps drawing us back and keeps wanting to be a part of our story? And you spoke about this memory with a lot of fondness, and how it sort of if you have a train track, it sort of detoured it up to a different direction.
Right.
Have you had a chance to speak with the organizers of that event since, and talk through the impact of that moment on your life?
No, not at all. I don't know if I could ever contact. Maybe there's a history somewhere of that, but I don't know that. I mean, this is a long time ago. But that's an interesting question, because of all the meetings I've been to and conferences, as far as I know, that was the only one that had a study session for non-Jewish spouses. And that was something that changed my life, because it meant that I would have a Jewish family finally.
Can you remind us what the name of that organization was?
It's the World Congress of LGBT Jews.
I'm sure we'll all have to check it out.
Today, probably it would be more politically correct for LGBT Jews, but being that it was founded much longer ago, it's WCGLBTJews.org instead of LGBT.
So you're a dad? You're a father?
I'm a dad. I am a dad. I'm the oldest. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. My partner is an only child. So did we have some different ideas about child rearing? You bet. But that's another story. But the question you didn't ask about London is, what was the deciding factor when Steve started studying Judaism that led him to want to convert? And he had studied other religions before I met him, but in the time prior to this, we were completely a-religious. And I said, well, so what's the deal? What's the thing about Judaism? And he says, it's a religion that doesn't insult your intelligence. It doesn't ask you to believe things that are impossible.
Hmm.
So,
And here you are.
yeah.
Wow. Uh, so I'm interested. So it seems like you carry your gayness proudly in the Jewish spaces that you inhabit these days. Um, are you out as Jewish in the gay spaces in which you live?
Well, I mean, I'm not out a whole lot here because I don't speak Spanish. So, I mean, I'm as out as I can be in the spaces that I have. I mean, I do have a gay pride wristwatch strap. Um, if somebody notices or if they don't. But if the issue presents itself, I am completely integrated as gay and Jewish in my life.
Um, and how do you think the experience of being a gay Jewish man in Buenos Aires compares back in the States in your experience?
Well, I don't think I could do much of a compare and contrast because I'm here older at a whole different point of life. And I, to me, it is not even an issue. It's not even a talking point. Um, I live in an apartment building where there are 30 units. I don't know the people necessarily well, but I live here with another man, and they can make their own assumptions. But it's never been a problem for me, as best as I can tell. I mean, no one seems to have caused any problems for me.
And I also wanted to ask, in your journey, you've been through a lot, um, but it seems like you always find your way back to Judaism. It seems like you consciously make choices. It's not like you just stumble upon these organizations. It sounds to me like you make a conscious effort to be involved in Jewish organizations, whether it's or Hadash or the World Congress. Um, what does Judaism mean to you these days?
Well, that I totally was not prepared for as a in this because I'm thinking so much to gay issues. But I mean, to me, Judaism still is a set of values to try to heal the world, to try to observe the uh, rituals that we've learned about that maybe were observed in various forms for thousands of years to make continuity um, and oh gosh, uh, I'm going to flounder a little bit on that because I just haven't really uh, put that into perspective. But it's it's something that does have a hold on me for whatever reason, and I recognize that, and I pursue uh, that identity for myself as well as the identity of being gay.
I have one final question. Um, so you were born in 1953, and you've had an incredible life journey since then. um, things are a little bit different for younger people growing up. I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on the events that happened in your day compared to what's happening today, and um, do you have any larger thoughts on that?
Well, I won't say something like, "Oh, you've got it so easy now," because there are always issues, and every journey is personal. I mean, when I got fired in 1980 something for being gay, that was one time, okay. But I had many jobs since then, and every time you take a job, you have to decide: do I come out? How do I come out? How do I integrate my life with my personal life with my work life? So the challenges still exist. They're maybe different. They may not be as great, but they're still there. And the key thing is to learn who you are. Go to therapy like I did many times, or whatever you need to do to be you, and make that authentic you the person that goes to work, that finds a lover, that goes to worship if you choose to worship, that walks the street or goes to a parade, or just be the authentic self. Find that person, find you. Don't bifurcate, don't split yourself up. Be the whole, grow the whole, and make that whole what you present to the world. Because one of the hardest things, just even growing up, whether you're gay or not, is, if I'm like myself, will people like me? Because people think they have to be something for others. But you don't. There will be people who like you once you figure out who you are. And you don't need to worry about the people who like you and who don't like you. Be you and let the people who like you find you.
That's such a beautiful way to end our time together. Um, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share?
Well, there was a program of videos that went around the United States a few years ago under the theme, It Gets Better. And if it's not good now, stay in the fight, because it gets better.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for being here with us at Pride in the Living Room, Jewmos edition. Um, yeah, can't top that.
Well, I'm really delighted that you reached out to me. It's good to see you again. Uh, it was nice visiting with you while you were here in Buenos Aires. And I kind of plan to go to New Zealand and Australia next April, but I might scale that back some at this point. Um, who knows? If I have a vaccine by then, the world is going to be a lot different.
Some of the states in Australia are okay. Our state, Victoria, is in lockdown at the moment.
Yeah.
We'd love to have you come visit us sometime.
Well, thank you very much. Hope I can work it out.
I'll just end by saying, here's to sharing our story in this moment and many more moments in the future. Thank you so
Right.
much for your time.
Thanks. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat
Ciao.
shalom.